Jeff is, has a dislocated shoulder, and he still he was really unbelievably kind enough to come and speak here today. He's the chairman of Zula, and I don't know if anyone in this room doesn't know Jeff Pulver. If you don't, he's pretty much, I would say, founded or invented the voice over IP space many years ago. He'll tell you his story. It's truly inspiring. But again, chairman of Zula and just a really overall inspiring guy, so enjoy it.
Good afternoon. So, what I was going to talk about was a different kind of messaging which has been discussed here. I don't believe this is discussed yet, although I did miss part of this conference. I had other things I had to take care of myself. But to put a little context on things, I have been doing internet communications for a very long time. And I've been involved in really observing more than doing, but perhaps helping to facilitate change. You know, 20 years ago, how many people, I'm just curious, in the 90s, in the 80s, how many people here were on CompuServe, on chat? You're that old, okay. And how many people here were on IRC? Okay. And so, all right, so enough said. So that's really, if you like Slack, you like IRC, I get it. And those, of course, who don't understand what I spoke about will never understand Slack. But the thing about, how many people here, by the way, have mobile phones? And how many people here are prepared to pay money to make sure that the location of where they're at is not transported to the person they're talking to? You're kidding me, right? But that's the new service your carriers will be charging you next year or the year after. You think, just like, how many people here used to have a landline? How many people here used to have an unlisted phone number? And you paid money to have an unlisted phone number. Trust me, you're going to pay money to have your presence unlisted. This is the new place where carriers are going to fuck you. Because they've been totally disintermediated in many other ways. But they know where you are. So you can't lie. Because they know where you are. So you can't like tell somebody running late when you're really in a bar. Can't do that, because the actual physical location of where you're at is with your signal. Just right now, they're not showing it. And that's where services will go. Because the way the phone companies think, the way that they operate, is always to figure out ways to make money. But this will not be invented by someone who works in a phone company, because historically, they need other people to think for them. So they'll pay a lot of money to the first startup that turns off location. So you guys want to make $1 billion tomorrow? Do that. It will work. And you got to do something very simple. But the whole idea of transporting information is actually something we've been trying for a very long time. So back in the days of IRC, I mean, because now we're into emoji. How many people here know, I can't even spell emoji, but those emoji cons. I mean, only with my iPhone 6 do I actually have an emoji keyboard. My God, I'm not the only person that didn't have an emoji keyboard. But, you know, way back when, you know, I thought I was really cool when I understood how to make these smiley faces with my text. But what were we trying to communicate back then? Feelings, right? Because when you're talking to someone in a nonverbal way, you're trying to connect, right? We're always trying to share something. We don't want to not let anyone know where we are. Sometimes we want to let people know how we feel and where it's at. And if you look at the future where communication is going, I think that what we're becoming more and more is connected. And whether you take it on a spiritual level, a business level, being able to express and share our feelings in a meaningful way is a difference, it's a game changer. So in 2014, there are 7.3 billion plus people in this world. But the difference between 2014 and 1995 is that we actually have much more of the world connected than ever before. That no matter where you are in the world, chances are if you're in a third world country, you have much better connectivity than if you are in certain parts of Manhattan. That you have the ability to bring the world together. And when you bring the world together, amazing things can and will happen. It takes time. But when you can open up communication, and you can actually let everyone know we're people, magic will happen. And at the heart of this, in my opinion, is being able to actually be a person, being able to share and actually express yourself in a meaningful way, to be able to communicate feelings. It was kind of hard. It was very cutesy on CompuServe trying to share emotion. It was very hard in IRC, but we tried to connect. But what you've noticed maybe about yourself, back in the days of CompuServe, everybody had a handle, right? I was Tranquility Base. I was on the CB channels too. But we were not ourselves. I wasn't John Pulver until I went on IRC. I was one of the few people in IRC to actually use my own name, which was kind of weird. But I was me. And I noticed that in the early 90s on the internet, that most people wanted to hide behind a pseudonym. And then over time, most people became themselves, or at least presented a persona of who they were, who they wanted to be, without necessarily exposing themselves too much. When we look to where communication is going, I believe that it's the comfort of being connected, combined with the convenience of being connected, and the subtleties of being connected, that will be the game changer. And that when you can actually share love, and share feelings, and to be emotional in a business way, and in a personal way, and to actually embrace life, I think that's where it goes. That every year I think that the next big startup is going to be about life. But I think that we're closer, that we're more connected. Because at the end of the day, little things in life matter sometimes the most. And sometimes you don't appreciate these things until you don't have them. And when it comes to communication, communication is either free or it's priceless. And try talking to someone who's dead. You use a medium, but some people would pay $1 million to talk to their dad or their mom or their brother or their sister one more time. But yet you have the ability to communicate with people every day. But how many of those communications are even meaningful? How much time do you even put into thinking about what you want to say? Or even go through the motions of talking to somebody because you're busy. But one day you wake up and you realize you have to be present. So when I look to the future of messaging, what I'm looking at is a platform that allows us as people to be connected in a very meaningful way, in a soulful way, in a way where we can actually connect and actually share things, and be exposed and be vulnerable. And that's the other thing, vulnerability. You know, there's some people that will tell you that you can be very successful if you allow yourself to be vulnerable. I believe that to be true. And I think it's through messaging that you allow yourself to be vulnerable. That the more you're willing to or able to open up, the more amazing things happen as a result of opening up. And I can share with you some stories, some personal stories which have nothing at all, at least nothing obvious about messaging, but it's all about messaging. It's all about communicating. 2.5 years ago, the person that was me I had a lot larger physical presence. In the last 2.5 years, I figured out ways to outsource over 120 pounds. And I didn't know it was outsourcing until last year, but it was outsourcing. And I say that because if you lose something, you want to find it. Sometimes it finds you. But if you outsource it, you don't give a damn. And I, you know, since my early days on the internet, I was very open about many things. That is to say that I wasn't shy to share what was on my mind. I moderated mailing lists since the mid-90s. But in July of 2012, when I decided to go on a journey to get rid of some weight and not have surgery, and do it the old-fashioned way by rebooting myself, I didn't tell anybody. I was quite quiet about that. It was my friend Alain Benoor, who was the former CEO of Vocaltech, who a couple of months later encouraged me to open up. And what he reminded me of something was something which is very key, is about messaging. He said to me to go on Facebook and to share my journey. And it took me 6 weeks. It took me until October 22nd, 2012 to, what I wrote at the time was a manifesto. I wrote a manifesto, well, nothing is impossible, and I shared some pretty damn ugly photos of me back in the gym for the first time since high school, working out, at least attempting to. And in sharing and expressing 2 goals. And unfortunately, I can't actually show off one of those goals that I did achieve, because of what happened last week, but I had one goal was within 9 months at that time to do a 1-arm push-up. The other one was to lose 100 pounds. And I then basically shared that on Facebook. Within minutes of sharing that manifesto on Facebook, what I discovered was love. Unbounded love from total strangers. People who I didn't know, not my friends, who basically related to my story and were encouraging me from day one, or really 3 months into my journey, or 4 months into my journey, but for them, that moment, encouraging me to continue on what I was doing, and they started to connect. Every time I reached a certain goal in my life, as I was being more comfortable being open, more people came in. It got to the point where a month later I shared a photograph. If any of you go to the gym, I had never been, but I shared a photograph of me doing a lat pull down, which was a pretty simple exercise. 533 likes. The first time I ever got 500 likes on anything. And when you looked at who liked that photo, these people didn't like me. No way. But they liked what I was doing. And what I discovered, it's about messaging, right? It's about connecting. There are the 4 words that I always spoke about from when I first started using Twitter. About listening, connecting, sharing, and engaging. These are the same 4 words I learned as a kid growing up using ham radio. If you're a 13-year-old kid growing up on Long Island and you want someone to talk to you, because they don't want to talk to you, you have to learn to listen. You have to learn to connect. You have to learn to share. And you have to learn to engage. And it's all about that message. And so for me, what I ended up doing over the course of a year is I actually outsourced the weight. And my blood pressure, my medicines got better, everything. I mean, I rebooted my entire body. It was pretty cool. And as I reached different milestones, I got more and more engagement, and it was crazy. And I discovered love. And I discovered that if you're willing to open up and share and be vulnerable, there's magic. And what's even more magical is the stuff that I never spoke about until now, and that's, I believe that between me and my friends, we outsourced tens of thousands of pounds in the last 2 years, seriously. Because friends of mine who are very closed about their own journeys opened up. And a friend of mine along the way taught me about a law which I quote all the time, which I still think Yogi Berra invented, which is the law of readiness. It says that you're ready when you're ready. Which makes sense, right? But you know, because 100 people could love you and tell you you should go to the gym, you're going to feel better. But until you wake up and you feel comfortable enough to do something, you're not going to do it. So the examples they give, and if you look up law of readiness, that if you're learning to swim, the moment you learn to float, you're ready to swim. If you're trying to teach someone how to ride a bicycle, the moment they take the training wheels off, they're ready to learn to actually ride a bike. But when you can go on a journey, whether it's for weight loss, to do a startup, to do something meaningful for your life, you've got to be present. You have to be ready. And only when you're ready for that moment in your life can you do anything. So I discovered my own law of readiness. And I messaged and I shared, and it's been an incredible time because I did get rid of the weight, I kept it off. People who I don't know, who are total strangers to me, opened up to me every day, almost. They tell me about their journeys. I am not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist, but I try to encourage people to find themselves and to do what's good for them. And collectively, we've gotten rid of a lot of weight. And then last week happened. And I was reminded about being open, and I was reminded about messaging, and I was reminded about being present. And this is something which, you know, it's not about, you know, what I love, by the way, how many people here are on Instagram? I'm just curious. Show them? Wow. So if you don't follow me, this will make me feel better. You can follow my journey. Because on Facebook, I used to share everything, and I got tired of sharing everything on Facebook, so I decided to share my food on Instagram. So it's Jeff Kenny, Kenipulver on Instagram. And what I discovered in the last few months about messaging and about connecting is that Facebook became the like economy. And I mean that from a business perspective, it's all about the like. That if you have and of course if you pay money to Facebook to get more likes, and if you want to share information, you have to pay more money because you had more likes. And let's face it, if the Beatles had a choice to write 2 different songs, All You Need to Love and All You Need Likes, I think All You Need to Love would do a little bit better. But Instagram is all about love, right? Even when you like something, you're making a heart, right? You're sharing love. And I like that part of it a lot. And so last week, a week ago today, I was with my friend Jacob, our co-founder of Zula. We were having lunch, actually before lunch. And what happened was, I basically don't remember, but what I'm told is I somehow, just while I was sitting down, I had a seizure. And during the seizure, I was strong enough, because I do work out a lot, I'm very proud of that part, and I basically dislocated my right shoulder, broke 2 bones in my shoulder, and tore the muscle off my bones. And on Thursday, I'm going to go for some surgery to reconstruct my shoulder. And a couple of days ago, after I was living through this, and I was in Tel Aviv at the time, because see, in my head, the high point of my journey was Jeff, who 2.5 years ago would take a taxi to go 3 blocks in Manhattan. I was ready to go be part of a 10K night run in Tel Aviv. I didn't make a really big deal about it with anyone but me, and I was so excited. Jacob is a marathon runner, and I thought it'd be so cool to run the streets of Tel Aviv at night and to actually be part of this night run. And then I even figured out I was going to Instagram in advance, and I was so excited about all this. But no, at lunch, I ended up with a seizure. Can't run. So I ended up in the hospital. I ended up at this medical center, became a medical tourist, which was a new experience to me, but that was my designation. And what I discovered was crazy, and I hope to be composed in this, but basically, I found love again. People, friends of mine in Israel became family. People opened up, they showed up, they came. And I was moved enough that I went on Facebook, and I opened up and I shared in my status update exactly what I just told you. And the last I checked, I got 650 plus likes, and almost more than 300 comments from people around the world. In some cases, these are people I have no idea who they are. But they were present there for that moment for me. And I'm grateful of that. And that's where I think the secret to being successful in messaging is all about. It's finding that balance that allows you to share your humanity, to share your vulnerability, and to be present every day. To allow yourself to find that boundary where you can be open and be connected, and still be commercial if you want to be commercial, or not be commercial. And I think that's where we're at. That, you see, we have the technology now that we didn't have 20 years ago to transmit our physical location. And I wasn't kidding. I do think the phone companies next year or the year after, when they really are looking for revenue, will charge you money to turn off your location. I was joking with this with AT&T back in 2004. Because back in the early 2000s, if you guys remember, how many people here from the telecom services business? Some of you. So if you remember location-based services and what people were trying to do. So I participated in lots of roundtables of ways phone companies could actually make money in the future. And this was one legit reason that they actually thought they could make money. So anyway, the thing is, back then, even in the days of ICQ, there were a lot of features and functionality we wanted to deliver as service providers or as developers, but we were limited by the platforms we had, not by our imagination, but the practical reality of what was in front of us limited our ability to deliver something of quality. 20 years later, we can do that. We actually can deliver a lot of the vision. It's delayed 20 years, and now, of course, we want to do more. But I think that secret balance of finding a way to allow someone to be a person, that be uncomfortable but comfortable enough to be alive, and to share presence, and connect with that presence is priceless. And so things like FaceTime are amazing. And any type of video service where you have the ability to connect with a loved one is pretty cool. I'm very proud of the fact, and some of you know this, but how many people here use FaceTime or Skype video? And how many people, well, Skype video they used to charge, but how many people here are paid for FaceTime? No one? We're all welcome. Because my paranoia had me 11 years ago going to the government. And I actually got a law passed 10 years ago called the Pulver order, which basically in no uncertain terms says that voice communication that starts on the broadband internet, when it touches the legacy phone, if it doesn't touch the legacy phone network, for it not to be regulated as telecom. And that facilitated things to grow, whether it was FaceTime, Snapchat, Skype, all these services had a greenfield opportunity for the past 10 years to just grow and foster. Because I was paranoid about what could happen if someone tried to take away our creativity. But it's about presence, right? You can define presence in different ways, I won't do that now. But if you could extend presence to self, and extend self to being, and extend those feelings that are priceless when you have an emotional connection to somebody, that's where it's all at. And I think that's where we need to find that balance. For business, yes, some people don't want to be mushy, but some people make $1 billion being mushy. And of course, to facilitate that mushiness, it's priceless. And if you can come up with a way to allow the world that's now connected more than ever before to leverage their ability to connect, we will have less wars. We'll have more fun. And we'll have more open communications, because at the end of the day, it's the people that use these technologies that define the rules for them. So when I look to the future, I believe that never before in our history have we had a chance as people to avoid conflict, because we have a chance to be connected. And you can choose not to connect. But if you can find a way to be open, and I'll tell you with me, I mean, my recent shoulder separating experience and the reminder of being open on Facebook and letting people share love, it's crazy. I mean, I don't know what to do about it, so I just love it. And I encourage, and I'm grateful for it, and I just thank people. So, you know, after seeing that reaction, it basically prompted me to sharing everything else that's happening to me this week, because I figured maybe someone else cares. What I found out was about 7 of my friends had seizures. And these are all people that actually have no other seizures in their life, that happened once. So I'm not alone. And I found that people are connecting with what I'm going through. And if you want to make a business of that, I think that's a great business. Of creating an environment to allow people to make meaningful connections. And I'm always stressing about the commercialization of something, but I don't think we can ever over-commercialize love or being. And if you find that balance that works between the two, you are the next $1 billion startup. And if you can just allow 2 people to connect one more time in a meaningful way, that's priceless too. So I don't run away from love. I don't run away from connecting. I embrace it. I cannot encourage you to be more vulnerable than you are, or that you feel comfortable at, but where I found success in my life is by pushing the boundaries of how to connect. And I do think that as long as you keep it real and say things that matter to you, that you will find a way through these platforms that will be great for you too. So anyway, that's my story. You have a question? Yes?
That was beautiful and inspiring. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say a few points I was thinking about. One is that it's interesting, my husband's not on Facebook because he feels like it's all that social media. I mean, he also doesn't have time, but he feels like it's a loss of like a personal connection. And you were speaking about this amazing,
Well, let me just wrap on that one point for a minute, if I could do this in a minute. I believe in digital breadcrumbs. You see, I have twin sons. This is really going to be hard, but luckily the pain medicine will stop me from crying, I hope. I have twin sons, they're 20 now. And I say that because I'm proud of them. And the thing is that they're the next generation that they're going to be responsible for, probably more than them themselves. But until today, to be well known in the world, you either were famous or infamous. Either you did something amazing or something horrible. But the average person didn't matter. That we came, we did, we died. We came, we did, we died. But you see today, in the advent of social media, the amazing thing is that Hillel's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren will know who he is. They'll be able to reconstruct his life. Because he's leaving behind enough breadcrumbs. And then some. He's through things like Twitter, which we could talk about, or Facebook, status updates, or photographs on Instagram, or people who use Flickr, or people who use YouTube, or blogs. Our words are being captured. And your legacy will be able to know, I mean, when someone tells me that Twitter is a waste of time and no one gives a damn that I had a stomachache yesterday or that I went to the bathroom and it hurt, maybe not today, but for someone in the world to know, right, that someone else could have pain, that someone else can hurt, that a distant relative went through the same experience as they did 40 years before, that's a connection. And what we have the first time in our history that we can do is to connect these dots. We have an ability to leave behind digital breadcrumbs in a meaningful way that will allow our lives to matter. And you could actually put words out today that will be heard in future generations. Whether you like it or not, they'll be heard. So I encourage people to not be silent to their future legacy. Not to be silent to know that they were here. Because while some people will argue that it's possible to tweet when you die, that most of the time, if you can capture what you're feeling and sharing, somebody will benefit from knowing it's okay to be that person at that moment in time. And so that's all about messaging. And yeah, that's, I think, a $1 trillion business. If you could figure out how to make legacy happen in a meaningful way. It's not just about family history. This is about taking someone's life and adding meaning to it in a way so that their voice radiates and it's heard from generation to generation, door to door. You can do that now, right? You don't have to be in the Bible to do this. Everyone can be heard. Everyone matters. It's just a matter of how you connect those dots. Because I'll tell you this, my dad passed away from cancer. He died in '98. And I remember after sitting Shiva, going to see my grandfather. We had a photograph of my father, as an 8-year-old kid, having this photograph taken. And I still remember and regret not asking my grandfather what he thought about my dad that day that he had his photo taken. Now, if we had Twitter back then, maybe the photographer would have been saying something about my dad. Maybe my dad, as a smart-ass kid, would have been saying something about having his photo taken. And maybe my grandfather would have said something about the whole experience. I'll never know. But those are the types of life moments that may seem trite and trivial. You accumulate them together, they're very powerful. And so I respect people who don't want to be on Facebook. I respect people who don't want to be public. But for the sake of their future brethren, find a way to share the words from generation to generation. Anyway, guys, I think I don't want to drive any time, hello, or am I out of time? What?
4 minutes.
All right, well, I hope I addressed at least the first part of your question, but...
You did.
All right.
I wish he heard this. I'm a fan. But,
It's recorded.
And I heard about your story through Hillel's page, and it inspired me just seeing you and reading about what you went through. The other thing is, I think it was what you were saying about connecting people and how we can understand each other and we can stop war.
I mean, maybe that's idealistic, but I do think, when we had the red phone between the U.S. and Russia, there was a concept of communication. That if we don't communicate, then we definitely can't stop stuff. And whether the channels are public or private, having an opportunity to connect is priceless. What you do with it, it's a whole other bag of worms. But anyway, you were saying?
So
yes.
I think a lot of people probably noticed this over the summer with the war in Israel. I was reading everything. I couldn't get enough, and it was mind-boggling. I mean, Hill and I talked about the comments. The anti-Semitism that you saw was just like, you didn't even know how bad it was until the war this summer. And then there was like little, sparks where like recently there was a Muslim guy who had known you, who was like, I saw the video, and it was so powerful. He was talking about hope and that, there could be peace, and he had a way to connect with hundreds of thousands of people with his little YouTube video, and I do think
it's not so little. I mean, that's the thing, by the way, that the consumers have, whether we're trying to stop religious wars or anti-Semitism or anti-something, it's the fact that there are social channels today that people can use to amplify. If you're a consumer and you're being screwed by your service provider, go on YouTube. There's a higher likelihood that your video will go viral than you're going to win the lottery. And your voice does, even if it's present for that moment, right? It encourages other people to speak up. But anyone else have any questions or comments? Yes, over here first. Yes, you, yes. Your name, what's your name?
Saul, thank you so much for being here again today. It's hard to get. But you keep on mentioning Twitter and Facebook. Do you feel that Facebook's curation makes it less valuable in the long run for this picture you're painting as opposed to Twitter?
Unfortunately, we can't all of us go into the future right now and know what the answer to that is, but I am slightly suspicious of the curation algorithms that Facebook has, but it's a business, and we accept it as such. I don't know, we'll see. I'm not such a big fan. I'm an investor in Twitter, but I'm not necessarily a big fan of Twitter for all stuff. And I do think that when you think about at least the stuff that we're living through, there will be other platforms in 3 years that will make Facebook what, Twitter what. That these are not platforms that necessarily guarantee a lifetime of existence. What I discovered is something which I call nowism, which everyone else has a different word for, but it's about being present. I mean, how often do you have a meeting with somebody and that person is so worried about yesterday or so focused on tomorrow that even though they're standing in front of you, they're not there. Social media has a way of taking you away from your now. I spend most of my time trying to be present in my flow, in my now. So I don't know whether these social networks will make it or not, but as they have pressure from shareholders and stuff, maybe they'll figure it out. And we could all be purists, but I do think there will be platforms that evolve that do capture some of these elements. In fact, maybe some of the stuff already existed, and I just outed someone's startup, maybe 3 of them, whatever. But we're all people, and that's the thing we forget about, right? We try to outsource and try to disintermediate our humanity, and it sucks. But when you allow yourself to embrace you as a person, that's where the magic is. Over here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Jeff, I'm also very inspired by what you said, and I was just the vulnerability, and how did you get to that stage to come out of, you mentioned you went from Facebook to Instagram. How did you do that in your personal journey? Able to say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to share it with people. That I definitely don't have time to explain now, but it was a revelation. And I obsess right now. I remember, it wasn't that long ago, that I used to be very stressful about what my Facebook status updates were going to be, that I would write them out in advance, days in advance, trying to figure out what I was going to say. Before I got healthy, I spent 5 years saying good morning to the world on Twitter. And I sacrificed saying good morning to be able to go to the gym and work out. Although I guess I have more time now to say good morning again. When it comes to Instagram, I'm coming in there pretty clean. I discovered, though, an entire world that's evolved. And in fact, a month from now, in this very room, I was going to do a conference called the #economy. But I postponed it to the spring because I don't think I can recover and curate a conference. But I think that there's lots of very interesting things happening in that area. And I'm still learning. But I discovered passion and love. And there is a vulnerability. And if you allow yourself to feel between the photos being shared, there's a connection. And sometimes you feel, it's like